Loved by his teammates and hated by coaches, J.R. Smith never met a shot he didn't like. In his prime, he was a guy who could take over a game. And when he was in the zone, J.R. was one of the best scorers in the NBA. But he was also a knucklehead who will always be remembered for making one of the biggest mistakes in sports history. J.R.'s career produced many memorable highlights: acrobatic dunks, stupid mistakes, and not wearing a shirt for days after winning an NBA championship. But how good was J.R. Smith actually? To answer that question, we have to take it to his early childhood, because J.R. Smith was destined to be an NBA player from the age of 2, and it was all because of his father. Smith Sr. was a decent college and minor league player, but because he didn't achieve his dream of playing in the NBA, he wanted that for his son. So as soon as J.R. could walk, he was shooting on toy hoops, and by the age of 3, he could sink free throws regularly. But not everything came to J.R. so easily. He suffered from dyslexia and ADHD, so he struggled in school, feeling uneasy and shy in the classroom. But all that discomfort immediately disappeared when he stepped on the court. J.R. played football, baseball, and basketball. He was athletically gifted enough to succeed in any of those sports. And during his high school days, Smith was praised by virtually everyone around him, not just for his athleticism, but his caring heart, big smile, and strong work ethic. The only time J.R. pissed off his coaches was when he took wild shots over 3 defenders, but to his credit, they often went in. With a simple flick of the wrist, Smith could drain threes from laughable distances, closer to half court than the three-point line. And because of his athleticism and shooting prowess, J.R. was regarded as the best shooting guard in the country. And at the 2004 McDonald's All-American game, Smith dominated with 25 points in just 20 minutes on the court, winning the MVP on a roster filled with future NBA stars. Colleges were all over him, and J.R. ultimately chose North Carolina. But just as everything seemed to be going perfect, his father got sick. He couldn't work anymore and the money stopped rolling in. J.R. really wanted to go to North Carolina, but he was scared that his family would end up on the street. So, to support his family, J.R. decided to skip college and declare for the draft. In the 2004 NBA draft, where a record 8 high schoolers were selected with the first 19 picks, J.R. landed in New Orleans, who selected him 18th overall.
In the 2004 NBA draft, the New Orleans Hornets select J.R. Smith.
But while the 6'6" J.R. was physically ready for the NBA, he was mentally miles away from being a professional athlete. During the first week of the season, Smith asked his teammates if the morning shoot-around was obligatory because he didn't feel like he needed it. And as the checks started coming in, so did the change in his behavior. It seemed like he was more concerned with getting new tattoos than playing basketball. He wasn't in bed by 11 anymore and stopped being nice to everyone. After a loss, Smith was unbothered, laughing as if they won. His defense was non-existent, and his shot selection was giving migraines to the entire coaching staff. I just wish I was more mature at the time, as opposed to being so young-minded. I was 18, but from a maturity standpoint, I was 13. As a rookie, Smith averaged a decent 10 points per game, but in his second season, J.R.'s playing time and scoring dropped, despite the addition of spectacular rookie point guard Chris Paul, someone who should have made Smith better in every way. For the first time ever, J.R. wasn't the best player on his team, and he was pissed off. On top of that, his coach, Byron Scott, was an old-school, hard-nosed disciplinarian who practiced a my way or the highway approach, and J.R. hated him. They went months without speaking to each other, and when Scott benched him while the Hornets were depleted by injuries, Smith vented to the press about his coach's big ego, essentially begging for a trade. So, soon enough, the Hornets obliged, trading P.J. Brown and Smith to Chicago for Tyson Chandler. 6 days later, Chicago also got rid of him, sending him to Denver for 2 second-round picks. And it gets worse, because after the 2006 season, NBA Commissioner David Stern was becoming increasingly disgusted by the collective immaturity of the league's younger players, such as Smith, and the effect it was having on the NBA. So, the NBA mandated that American-born players must be at least 19 years old and at least 1 year removed from high school to be draft eligible for the league. Because he was already on his 3rd team in 3 years, J.R. decided that he needed to really pick up his game if he wanted to stay in Denver and in the NBA. And that might have been a good plan if he hadn't joined the worst possible crowd in the league. His teammates were Allen Iverson, Carmelo Anthony, and Kenyon Martin, all known for their lack of respect for authority and spending time in clubs instead of going to morning shoot-arounds. The videos of Nuggets players partying until early morning and getting into street fights began surfacing on the internet almost every week. And even though he averaged 13 points per game and was one of the best three-point shooters in the league, Smith's first season in Denver will only be remembered by incidents. On December 16th, Smith played a big part in one of the biggest brawls of this century between the Nuggets and the Knicks, for which he served a 10-game suspension. Later, in February of 2007, J.R. was driving Melo home after practice. practice. But because Smith was driving recklessly, he crashed Anthony's car. Thankfully, both players were uninjured. But 4 months later, on June 9th, the repercussions of his crazy driving were far more severe. Smith was driving an SUV and ran a stop sign, resulting in a collision with another vehicle. Smith wasn't seriously injured, but one of his passengers, friend Andre Bell, died 2 days later as the result of head injuries he sustained in the crash. In a span of 7 months prior to the accident, Smith had 8 traffic violations for speeding and driving under the influence. He received a 90-day jail sentence, avoiding a more serious felony charge for the death of his friend.
Yeah, I went to jail when I was in the league. Like, you know what I'm saying? I did 24 days in a 23-1 in a cell.
And agreed to perform 500 hours of community service. The accident did sober him up a little. And in the 2007-08 season, Smith established career highs for field goal percentage, 46%, and three-point percentage, 40%. Then, in the playoffs, JR was arguably the best Denver player in a first-round series against the Lakers. But because nobody on the Nuggets played a lick of defense, they got swept. For the 2008-09 season, the Nuggets traded Allen Iverson for Chauncey Billups, who brought stability and championship pedigree to Denver. Both Carmelo and JR blossomed next to Billups, and Smith averaged a career-high 15 points per game, finishing second in voting for the NBA Sixth Man of the Year award, behind Jason Terry. The Nuggets won 54 games, which was their best result in 2 decades, and they finally looked like a serious basketball team. With Billups as the floor general, Carmelo as the focal point of the offense, and JR as the X-factor off the bench, the Nuggets breezed past the Hornets and the Mavs in the first 2 rounds, with JR averaging 16 points on some very efficient shooting in both series. And then, the conference finals series against the Lakers was a perfect microcosm of JR's NBA career and his inconsistency. In 2 games of the series, he finished with 24 points, and in the other 4 games, he scored 28 points combined, using 41 shots to score those 28. To be fair, Billups and Carmelo also had a bad shooting series, and the Nuggets lost the conference finals in 6 games. In the next season, it was much of the same for the Nuggets and JR. Blessed with incredible coordination and unreal athletic ability, Smith could make plays like few other humans could, like this insane 360 layup against the Spurs. But his basketball IQ was the polar opposite of his physical gifts, and he was the ultimate no, yes player, a man who takes the toughest shots and does stupid things on the court, but when he gets hot, he can become unstoppable. Like that night on April 13th, 2009, when JR scored 45 points in 29 minutes against Sacramento, hitting a franchise record 11 three-pointers. In the 2010 regular season, Smith again averaged 15 points off the bench and helped the Nuggets to win 53 games, but they immediately lost in the first round against Utah. In 2 of Denver's wins in the series, JR averaged 19 points, and in 4 losses, he averaged 7. It seemed like every year Smith wanted to become a more mature and more consistent player, the one who would play within the team's offensive scheme and stay engaged on defense. And every year he proved that he could do it for a game or 2, but never for an entire season. Smith constantly beefed with coach George Karl, who devoted an entire chapter of his book to JR and how he was driving him insane. The look of despair on Karl's face after JR launched a 25-footer with 20 seconds on the shot clock was present at almost every game. And it wasn't a surprise when the Nuggets didn't choose to extend Smith's contract following a disappointing 2011 season. In September 2011, due to the NBA lockout, Smith signed a 1-year deal with the Zhejiang Golden Bulls. During his time in China, he didn't come to a single morning practice, making up all kinds of stories, from the death of his grandmother to being stuck in an elevator. Still, when he suited up, JR obliterated the competition, averaging 35 points and 4 assists in 32 games. But his return to the NBA came at the worst possible spot, New York, the city that never sleeps. And Smith didn't sleep in it either. Countless bottles of Hennessy, clouds of weed, and an occasional fight in the club were the constant theme of his exploits. And when he posted a naked photo of his girlfriend on Twitter, the NBA fined him $25,000. And because he kept untying opponents' shoelaces at the free throw line, they fined him another $50,000. This was kinda hilarious, but because it was JR, it was sort of expected, and nobody was surprised anymore. However, what was surprising was that the Knicks' new coach Mike Woodson developed a great relationship with JR and viewed him as an important piece of the Knicks' rotation. Unlike Byron Scott and George Karl, Woodson didn't try to act like an Army drill sergeant, and he treated JR like he was his teenage son, which he kinda was. Woodson grew up with 11 siblings, so he knew how to deal with different personalities. And whenever JR did something stupid, Woodson didn't yell, and he tried to talk it out with JR. And this approach paid off. It's the best relationship I had with a coach ever, other than playing with my dad, because for the 2013 season, JR played the best basketball of his career in a system that was very similar to the 2009 Nuggets. Carmelo was on the team, and instead of Billups, there was Jason Kidd to steady the ship and feed him easy shots. Along with them, there were either smart vets or defensive aces like Iman Shumpert and Tyson Chandler, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. All Smith had to do was score. In a role that was tailor-made for his game, JR played 80 games that season, all off the bench, and he averaged a career-high 18 points, which earned him a Sixth Man of the Year award. The Knicks made the playoffs and won a first-round playoff series against the Celtics, which was their first series win in over a decade. However, in the second round against the Pacers, they fell apart, with JR taking 15 shots per game, despite shooting a horrendous 28% from the field and 23% for three. After the season, JR signed a new 3-year deal with the Knicks, after which he immediately got a 5-game suspension from the NBA for cannabis use. But when he started playing, both he and the team regressed, failing to make the 2014 playoffs. And then the 2015 season started even worse, and JR's shooting plummeted, which was supposed to be his main strength. So when the news got out that Smith got traded, nobody was surprised. But what was surprising was the fact that he got traded to Cleveland, a team with championship aspirations. And the truth was that the Cavs GM David Griffin didn't really want to bring JR on the team. It wasn't until LeBron personally guaranteed that he would put JR under his wing that Griff made the move. And when he got to Cleveland, Smith started following LeBron like a shadow. They trained together and sipped wine together.
At Cleveland, that was the first time I seen the whole team in the weight room and on the court. It was something that I've never seen before. His work ethic and his drive is ridiculous. It doesn't matter if you're the 15th man on the team or the second man on the team. He'll go work out with you. He's going to get shots up with you. He's going to talk to you, communicate with you.
Smith didn't go out because there was nowhere to go out in Cleveland. So he just kept shooting in the gym. And for the first time ever, he accepted the fact that he's a role player, not a star. Suddenly, JR started playing great defense, and on offense, he patiently waited for an open shot. And it worked. The Cavs made a miracle comeback against Golden State, becoming the first team to come back from a 3-1 deficit in the finals. Smith started every game for the Cavs, and even though his shooting efficiency plummeted in the finals, overall in the playoffs, his numbers have finally improved, and his defense has been excellent. JR was so happy and so drunk that he didn't wear a shirt for days, which inspired many memes, and even a joke from President Obama.
I want to give a special thanks to J.R. Smith's shirt for showing up.
In the offseason, the Cavs gave him a 4-year, $57 million contract, which made sense because Smith was still in his prime, and he just helped them to win the title. But it didn't take long for JR to make them regret it. In the 2017 regular season, Smith averaged a career-low 35% shooting from the field and just 8 points per game. And he kept having Shaq'd in a fool moments, like that time when he decided to leave the court to dap up Jason Terry during a live play. But unlike his earlier years, where he would regress in the playoffs, with the Cavs, it was different. As the playoffs went on, Smith kept improving, and in the finals against the Warriors, he was shooting 54% from the field and 58% from three, which is insane. However, Golden State was simply too good, and Cleveland lost in 5 games. In the 2018 regular season, Smith got into an argument with an assistant coach, Damon Jones, and he threw a bowl of soup at him, for which he got suspended by the team. But despite losing Kyrie and nearly every role player playing below their standards, LeBron somehow carried the Cavs to the finals, where he played one of the best games of his career. In Game 1, LeBron scored 49 points in regulation, showing the full splendor of his talent, and then it happened. One of the biggest blunders in NBA history, where J.R. Smith showed the full splendor of his stupidity.
Hill misses. Rebound goes to the Cavs. J.R. Smith brings it back out. Throws it to Hill. Hill shot blocked.
The man ruined the finals game and ruined LeBron James's 51 points. To make matters worse, Smith refused to admit that he didn't know the score of the game and said that LeBron should be happy that he was playing with him. James was so pissed off that he punched the whiteboard in the locker room, injuring his hand.
He's had to have 2 MRIs on the hand. He's been in a soft cast when he's been away from the media and away from practice.
But even if he didn't, the Cavs were morally depleted and they got swept. Before he retired, JR won another title, riding the bench on the Lakers in the 2020 bubble. But nobody will remember that, or that he retired ranking in the top 15 in three-pointers made, or that he was one of the most electrifying scorers of his era. Nope, they will remember him as a henny god, the basketball version of Method Man and Red Man in How High, a guy who untied people's shoelaces and forgot the score in the clutch moments of the NBA Finals. Thanks for watching Nonstop. And for more NBA content, click on our next video.